Hey everyone, I am the only Resh and welcome to the channel. So recently a friend reminded me of a game I haven't thought about in years, and that gave me a very strong urge to make this video of 10 of the games that had the biggest impact on my childhood and that I have so many great memories with. Let me know in the comments as you're watching if you've played any of these games and have good memories with them, or if there's other games I didn't list that you have good memories with. I had so much fun researching for this video. Let's get started. We're going to start with the oldest game on the list, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. This was a platformer from 1992 on the Sega Genesis. It had timed side-scrolling levels where the main goal is to stop Dr. Robotnik from stealing the Chaos Emeralds to power his space station. One of the most memorable parts for me was going through the casino night stage and playing the slot machine until I was almost over the 10-minute time limit for the stage. They got me with gambling mechanics at a very young age. This game had some pretty fun couch co-op too, because a second player could control Sonic's sidekick Tails, although the first player still controlled how fast they went through the levels, and the second player kinda just died if they couldn't keep up. But it was fine because Tails' deaths didn't really count for the first player's lives. And one of the most fun things to do in Sonic 2 was get to the special stages that were 3D, which made it so much cooler since the rest of the game was 2D. You would just run along this half pipe and gather rings and dodge bombs, and if you collected enough rings and passed each checkpoint, you got an emerald at the end of each of the special stages. If you got all of the emeralds, you could turn into Super Sonic by collecting 50 rings and jumping, making you invincible, run faster, and jump farther. At my mom's house growing up, the Sega Genesis was the only console we had for a long time, so I put a lot of hours into this game. And since there was no such thing as saving your progress on it, we had to pause the game and leave it on overnight if we wanted to continue the next day, which is how I finally beat the game. Which leads to one of my most memorable gaming experiences ever, getting to the final boss fight, which was a Metal Sonic, and that boss had the same moveset in the same order every time you fought it. So what did my sister and I do? After each of the boss's attacks, we would pause the game, write down what he did on a sheet of paper, and continue doing that for every attack until we knew every move he was going to make. I wish I could find that paper for this video, but that thing is long gone now. Next up, we've got one of my favorite games of all time, Star Wars Battlefront 2. The 2005 game, of course, not the 2017 game. It's the incredible first or third person shooter, because you can pick, as a sequel to the 2004 Battlefront game. It originally released on PS2, Xbox, and PC, also PSP, but that version had a lot of differences. I played it on PS2 when I finally got one at my mom's place. And talking about the single player aspects first, the game's campaign was a really cool idea because it told portions of the Star Wars story from the point of view of a veteran stormtrooper reminiscing about his time in the Galactic Republic, followed by the Galactic Empire. So you hear monologues before each mission, you see the internal conflict of the clones about betraying the Jedi. It's a really cool new perspective for the story. The main objective in the campaign and multiplayer modes was basically just eliminate the enemy faction and get their number to 0, similar to the Conquest mode in the Battlefield games. And also like the Battlefield games, you capture bases around the map to act as spawn points and lessen enemy numbers even more. You also got the space battles, and this mode was so fun to play. Really cool space combat with multiple different ships to choose from. You had to destroy the enemy faction's main ship by going after the engines, shields, and other aspects, and you boarded the enemy ship to go after the internal parts too. The whole concept was so cool and just such an epic gaming mode. One of the modes I played the most and have the most memories from is playing split screen with my best friend in the instant action mode, where we set reinforcements to 1,000 for both teams and had it on heroes and villains, so it was all the Jedi and Sith and other main characters in one big battle, and we would always choose the Mos Eisley spaceport for the map. We would play that for hours and hours on end as kids. The recent Battlefront games have been good enough, I guess, but they definitely don't feel the same as the classic games. Up next, we've got Halo 2. I think this game is on most people's lists for best games ever, best childhood games, best shooters, and many more. One of the greatest games of all time. It came out in 2004 for Xbox, and when I would go to my dad's house every other weekend, or when I would go over to my best friend's house, Halo 2 took up a lot of my time. Playing through the incredible campaign countless times, spending hours on split-screen custom matches, I've had some amazing memories with this game. Unfortunately, whenever I would play this game, it was always offline. I never got to experience the online multiplayer because my dad's and my friend's Xboxes weren't connected to the internet, but the custom games with 3 or 4 players were still a ton of fun. It was one of the first first-person shooter games I ever played. The map I remember playing the most was actually not Coagulation, aka Halo 2's Blood Gulch. It was Zanzibar. A lot of time putting the Ghost and Warthog on that big wheel, seeing how far we could drive in the water. Experiencing new Halo maps for the first time is such a cool experience, and it's so much fun to experiment with. Halo will always be one of, if not my number one favorite franchise of all time, and that's part of the reason I'm so excited for Halo Infinite. Even with the subpar graphics we saw in July, it still looked like some really fun Halo gameplay. Next on the list is Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. This is one of the first PS2 games I remember playing, and it is still one of my favorites. It's a stealth platformer by Sucker Punch that came out in 2002. The story of the game follows Sly Cooper, who's a raccoon, Bentley the turtle, and Murray the hippo as they seek out the Fiendish Five to recover his family's Thievius Raccoonus, a book with all of Sly's ancestors' thieving moves. I haven't played it in years, but I think the gameplay does still hold up pretty well. Good platforming, different attack patterns from different enemies, fun stealth gameplay, some minigame style moments, a good dynamic between the characters, a pretty enjoyable story, easily one of my favorite games as a kid. The sequels were also really good, and the series as a whole is one of my favorites. An HD collection with the first 3 games released on PS3 that you can only play now with a PlayStation Now subscription, which kinda sucks, or if you have a PS3 I guess. Same thing with the 4th game, Thieves in Time. Still waiting on a new Sly game, Sucker Punch, but they're busy with Ghost of Tsushima and probably that sequel now, so my hopes are very low for a new Sly game. And now we've got Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Yes, another video game adaptation of a movie, and another one I sunk hours and hours into. It was released in 2005 for the PS2, Xbox, Game Boy Advance, and Nintendo DS. And apparently there was also a mobile version. But the PS2 and Xbox versions are very different from the Game Boy and DS versions. I played it on PS2, so that's the version I'm talking about here. In the single player mode, you can play as Anakin and Obi-Wan going through the story of the movie. And throughout the game, we see over 12 minutes of footage from the actual movie, which I thought was such a cool aspect playing through it. The lightsaber combat was so satisfying in this game, and it made it really fun to go through these levels as a Jedi. Probably one of the coolest parts of this game is the multiplayer duel mode, where 2 players fight one-on-one in a lightsaber battle. Kind of like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, but it's not just 2D, you can move around whatever room you're in. This was such a fun way to battle it out with friends, playing as Jedi and Sith. You take part in some classic duels in the story mode also, including the one between Anakin and Obi-Wan. One really cool choice they made with this game was an alternate ending where Anakin kills Obi-Wan in the end, and then kills the Emperor, taking his place. Some of my best memories with this game are using the cheat codes in the single player mode. Mostly the infinite health and force power and the Super Sabers cheat code, which makes your partner have a huge lightsaber that's like 20 feet long. Next up, another one of my favorite games of all time, Jak 3. If you've never played through the Jak and Daxter games, I really think you've missed out because the main trilogy is so good. All 3 of them are some of my favorite games ever. I picked Jak 3 instead of 1 or 2 because it's my favorite and the one I spent the most time playing. The story across the trilogy is actually really good. Naughty Dog was the developer, so no surprise there. It released in 2004 for the PS2, and I'm not sure if I didn't play enough games in that time period or Jak 3 was just that good. I looked up IGN's review from back then and it said the game, quote, "Honestly, it looks better than 95% of Xbox and GameCube games on a system that just shouldn't be capable of doing what it's doing." So yes, Jak 3 is just that good, and I think it does still hold up. Gunfights with the 12 different guns you had, races and vehicle combat with, I want to say 10 different vehicle options for the desert and a good handful more for Haven City, light and dark Jak abilities like wiping out everyone around you, self-healing and flying, a hoverboard to cruise around anywhere with, the great story like I said before, big epic set piece moments, tons of cheats to use, fun minigames to play, an amazing open world. I can't compliment this game enough. And no, it's not just the nostalgia talking. I remember turning on invincibility and just taking on the whole city, turning on infinite light Jak and spamming shield and flying so you can go as high as you want, using that grasshopper vehicle in the desert and just launching yourself across gaps with boost. So many great memories with Jak 3. I am praying every year for another Jak game. You can actually still play the trilogy even on PlayStation 5 with the Jak and Daxter collection, so please give it a shot if you've never played them. and please play through them again if you love them as much as I did and still do. Absolutely phenomenal games. Next up, I'm sounding like a broken record now, but another one of my all-time favorites, but one that I think is a bit less well known than the others. Dungeons & Dragons Heroes. To start off, I would buy an Xbox 360 again specifically to play this one game and nothing else. This is a top-down dungeon crawler similar to Diablo, I think I would say, that released in 2003 for Xbox. You can play it solo or you can play 2, 3, or 4 player co-op and choose from one of 4 classes: a human fighter, a dwarf cleric, an elf wizard, or a halfling rogue. As for the story, the 4 heroes are brought back to life to fight their former nemesis, a wizard named Caden. The story moments in this game are actually pretty decent, but the gameplay and progression are what I really love about this game. Every time you level up from combat or by using XP elixirs, you put points into this huge skill list, not really a skill tree because it is just a big list, to unlock tons of cool abilities, including what is essentially an ultimate ability for each of the heroes. There are lots of different weapons for each class, different armor with different perks that you can find or buy from vendors, lots of rings and necklaces that can give you different buffs. The variety of items in this game was just so well done. One of the coolest things you can do playing through this game is search for these 25 hidden soul shards, or maybe it was 20, that upgrade your ancestral weapon, or the weapon that you start with and keep throughout the game. For every 5 shards you find, your ancestral weapon gets better stats and gets a more badass design each time. Towards the end of the game, when you find the last shard and get that fully upgraded weapon, it feels so cool. With the 4 different classes, it adds a lot of replayability too, because you want to find out what the other classes' abilities are and what their different ancestral weapons turn into. Plus, they all have their different fighting styles that are fun to try out. And while talking about replayability, there is essentially unlimited New Game Plus here. You can load in any saved character from any save file at any point in the game, including the beginning, but that also leads to some shameless cheating. Sometimes I would start a new character, and as soon as the game started, I would load in my character that was already leveled up, drop my good gear for my new guy, and then have the high level character leave, and since that character wasn't saved, they still had their gear I made them drop for the new guy. But moving on from cheating, the combat with different types of enemies in all the different environments you go to is really well done, and there are a bunch of epic boss battles spread across the game that are so much fun to play. And there are secret areas all over the place which are so satisfying to find. I played 4-player co-op with family members a lot in this game as a kid, and to this day I would gladly play through it again and again. I do still have the game at my place. I've had to buy it 2 or 3 times because I'll lose it, but then I can't not have it, so I buy another one off Amazon. And one of the more nostalgic pieces about this game is it is one of those that has the big thick guide in the cover that goes over the main characters, the enemies, the lore, and all that kind of stuff. So that's a really cool thing about this game. I just don't have a 360 at the moment, and it is so sad to me that the game is still not backwards compatible on Xbox One. Please comment on this video if you've played this game before. I don't really know anyone else that has, and I don't want to just rant about it to myself all the time. Next up is a much more popular game, Spider-Man 2. The game based on the movie with some comic book additions that weren't in the movie, but one of the most nostalgic games ever. It came out in 2004 for PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. Yes, I know it came out for like 4 other platforms, but those versions of Spider-Man 2 were all different games. I did play the Game Boy Advance version also, which I almost forgot about, but I'm talking about the PS2 version here. This was one of the coolest new games to play that was unlike anything I had ever played before, especially with Spider-Man being my favorite superhero. We got to swing around Manhattan in an open world as Spider-Man with swinging mechanics that were actually really good. With the fact that, like I said, unlike anything we had seen at the time, this game was so much fun to play and had so many cool moments. The couple parts I remember the most are the pizza deliveries, of course, with that classic song. And for whatever reason, the Quentin Beck boss battle with the moving platforms. Maybe I just liked that specific challenge as a kid, or something like that, but that's one of the parts I remember the clearest. Between all the comic book villains we saw, using the webs in combat in some fun ways, incredibly satisfying swinging, and a narrator that I recently remembered was kind of a dick in a funny way.
I'm sure you miss me more than I miss you. Now go jump in a lake.
This game was such a cool experience as a kid, and it was definitely a huge step forward for games at that time. It was a long time ago, which is why I'm glad we got the 2018 Spider-Man game and Miles Morales this year, or last year I suppose. It had been way too long since we had a good Spider-Man game, and I can't wait for the next one, probably in like 2 years. Almost to the end now. Next we've got Call of Duty 2. My memories with this one are kind of vague and simple, but the memories I do have are just too good to deny. Before we got all the crazy titles and insane changes to gameplay like Advanced Warfare, Infinite Warfare, and in Black Ops 4, there was just Call of Duty 2. It came out in 2005 for PC and Xbox 360. I actually didn't know it never came to PlayStation, but that really threw me off. Most of my time playing this game was at my best friend's house before I got an Xbox 360. And like I said before, he didn't have his Xbox connected to the internet, so the only multiplayer we got was split screen. All we would ever do, for some reason this was our favorite and we never changed it, we would set up a custom match on 2Jane, or however you say it, with just me and him, and since the Xbox 360 you could have your own music downloaded onto the hard drive, we always listened to Mambo No. 5 by Lou Bega on repeat while playing on that map. We loved that song so much as kids for whatever reason, so that's what we would do pretty much every time I went to his house. Those are some of my best memories as a kid, as a whole. And last but definitely not least, LA Rush. Honestly, I have no idea if this game was popular at all, but I absolutely loved it as a kid. My grandma got it for me on my birthday one year, and with my limited options, it was the racing game I spent tons of hours in around that time. It released in 2005 for PS2 and Xbox. I played it on my PS2 as a kid. The whole game is very early to mid-2000s, which makes looking back on it so much fun. For the story, your character, who goes by Trix, has this huge mansion and all these cars, but a rich guy, Lydell, takes all your stuff and leaves you with your first car, and you have to win races and steal your cars back. The free roaming actually wasn't bad. There were a bunch of stunt jumps that were always fun to get to, and one thing I didn't realize until a few years after I played it is that there are actually some famous people in the game as themselves or voice acting. The guys from West Coast Customs are in it, and they're the ones who customize your cars. Andre 3000 has a voice in it, and so does Twista. Twista also has some music in the game, which was my introduction to his stuff as a kid. And going back to the customization, that was one thing I didn't like about this game. You couldn't customize the cars yourself, you just brought the car to West Coast Customs and they did whatever they wanted with it. Granted, their cars were still cool, it just isn't the same as doing it yourself though. One of the things I remember most about this game, and something I really don't think I will ever forget, is the cheat code to get $5,000. I got the code out of one of those cheat code books you could buy, and the reason I remember it so well is because I entered it so many times to get so much money in-game. Up, down, left, right, circle, left, R2, up. I'm pretty sure I will remember that till the day I die. I will never forget that cheat code. And probably my favorite part about this game was the soundtrack. The game came with the soundtrack CDs, it came on 2 discs, and I actually listened to those songs all the time when I got those. I'll put the links to a playlist on YouTube for the songs in the description because most of the songs sadly aren't on Spotify for some reason. But the songs, just like the rest of the game, are very, very early to mid-2000s, but they're awesome. City of Angels, 50, 60, 75, Kill Us All, what an awesome soundtrack. This video was a ton of fun to make, and it was a really cool trip down memory lane for me, and hopefully it was for some of you as well. Initially I was worried I wouldn't have that many games to put on this list, but after going through this 10, I already have almost another 10 to do another video like this. So subscribe here on YouTube if you want to catch another one of these videos whenever that comes up, hopefully sooner rather than later. And once again, let me know in the comments if you have any fond memories of these games, or what other games you have really fond memories of that I didn't talk about here. I love hearing people's stories about fond gaming memories all the time. And for even more gaming conversations and thoughts from me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at TheOnlyResh. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, beat that boss, get that last collectible, roll those credits. I'm out.